Right. So if you could just quickly go to menti.com, use the code there, right? We would be basically have an understanding of whether you have heard of the word blockchain before, at least in the context of cryptocurrencies, right? So what you have to do is go to menti.com, as you can see on the top of the screen, and type in the code and then just share your views, right? So there is one no. So that's a good thing to see. Wasn't what we can get out of this simple session is we can have an understanding of the,
Right.
a draft percentage of people who have at least invested or thought about it.
Very true.
Right. So I think around 50% have invested or thought about it. I'm pretty sure the recent cycle is not very generous to all the cryptocurrency investors. I think it's fair to say that at least 50% of the people who have voted in have at least invested in cryptocurrencies or thought about it. So this kind of sets the context that within India, there are a lot of people who have heard about the cryptocurrency boom. And now what we will focus on is the underlying technology, right? Blockchain or the distributed ledger technology. And that is what we would talk about in our session for today. Over to you, sir. I think it would be better to come from you and on what your perspective is about blockchain. And if you can explain the technology to all our attendees here.
Yeah. See, actually, as Krishna mentioned, the blockchain is actually like, this is a technology where the distributed ledger concept is there. Where distributed ledger means the data is spread across multiple systems, multiple locations. So they're all linked to each other with coding and the framework, so that the data cannot be fudged, or there is a linkage to each of the data locations, and that linkages are closely knitted. And if somebody tries to do some manipulation or modification, though that the whole chain gets will not allow that to happen. It gets violated, and then this is the principle of this technology, where the distributed ledger data, as well as there's a security inbuilt into this, so that to ensure that the data integrity is maintained. Even then, there are people who violate this, as well as try to hack this. Some vulnerabilities are still there in this technology, but it's very CPU intensive technology. It involves a lot of computation and a lot of algorithms running behind that. So that is why it has not evolved in a big way. But nevertheless, because of the currency, the Bitcoin, and the craze for quick money, this is gathered momentum in the recent past. But this technology is there since long, and is used for distributed data storage, as well as some of the health records, health industry, currency, financial market, population record, the voter's ID, wherever the database is there, and wherever the database has to be maintained and up to date, the blockchain can be used for the benefit of the database user.
Right. So, like you mentioned, right, blockchain is something that has been here for a while, but it only popularized because of Bitcoin or the advent of different cryptocurrencies coming up in the market. So, when I was researching about blockchain or when I started to learn about it, the first question I had was, why did someone create Bitcoin? Right? What was the purpose? So, while I was doing that research, what I could understand is that I think most of you would be aware about the 2008 financial crisis, which brought down industry giant in the US, right? The Lehman Brothers, a huge bank, right? An investment bank. And the banks or the government bailed them out, right? So within this concept, the creator at least had this ideology to create a global currency which cannot be controlled by governments. Hence, introducing the concept of decentralization, which means giving power back to the public, right? And to make sure that everyone in the network is equally accountable for any fraudulent transactions on the blockchain. So that was the concept that was initially discussed. And I think times have changed, right? You have seen the technology evolved a lot. There is also, I think, a unicorn from India in the blockchain space. They are doing really well in the DeFi field, the decentralized finance field. And I think in the end, blockchain is about, it's about a fundamental right that it is trying to give to people, similar to what data privacy is, right? It's a fundamental right to people. And that is what blockchain, or at least Bitcoin, aimed to do when it was introduced. So that's just my perspective on why Bitcoin was introduced and how it got famous.
Yeah. See, I'm not a proponent of Bitcoin or any other
Yes, of
cryptocurrency,
course.
but there should be underlying asset or underlying technology or underlying services based on which the value will inherently be, like transparent to that. So, for example, if you invest in equity or a gold or any other financial instrument, there is an underlying asset and the background with which it moves up and down, the commodity on it. Here,
Hmm.
the technology is entirely the blockchain technology based on this blockchain is moving. So whether how much this technology is evolved and how much the technology is secure, and I think no is the who is the first comer and the first advantage, first mover. Based on this currency is moving is what I believe. But the underlying asset, I think, is still the technology behind it, and not anything which is tangible or physically identified. So there is no asset. So that is how it is. This is my personal opinion on this.
Right, of course. I think I completely agree with that. So people have to understand that blockchain and Bitcoin are, of course, not the same thing, right? Bitcoin works on that underlying technology that is blockchain. But in the end, Bitcoin is just kind of a fork that came out of the blockchain technology. It's something that people have developed because they had a vision on how to use that technology for something that can be given as a service to people, right? So blockchain is what we will focus on and how the data protection aspects can be applied to it as well.
Yeah.
Right. So there are different types of blockchain networks, right? There are public, consortium, private. So Vasant, sir, would you like to take it up?
Yes. The public blockchain is the most popular one, where all this entire the industry, the public internet is using presently the financial markets. All this sort of people are using this, and this is where the people can join, they can participate, they can buy the NFT, this all these non-fungible tokens. The entire thing is running on public blockchain. So this all distributed ledger concept, and that is how it is run. All this the software, the system, the platform, everything is built upon that. Whereas the private blockchain is totally guarded, and it is confined to the selected people. And for example, if the government organization, if they want to maintain the record of all the citizens, everything, and not disclosing with anything, it's only internal. Internal is only intranet, closely guarded secret within the organization or the company. That will come under blockchain. Private those people can have this private blockchain and maintain up to date. But nevertheless, I think for the requirements of updation, they can open it up for traders. Then it will become consortium blockchain where people will participate as per the requirements, and the owner will decide who can edit and who can update all these things. So where control of the data is provided to the larger set of people. And the consortium plan is the latest option to come up, where that is everybody contributes to, and the blockchain is the database is maintained up to date with a lot of contribution. It's like a crowdsourcing of the information.
Right. So I would just add on to that in the case that a public blockchain is, as an example, I think Bitcoin would be a public blockchain that you can usually see here, right? And private blockchains are mostly used by organizations that are trying to leverage the blockchain technology for some internal application or for some internal use, right? And private blockchain also gives the blockchain owner more rights to make changes to the blockchain, right? Because immutability, the concept of not making changes or immutability is something that blockchain holds dearly. And private blockchain, of course, the data is immutable. But then again, because it is the organization that is controlling that blockchain, they have certain accesses or certain kind of uh, edits that they can make on the blockchain, right? And when you focus on the simple concept of something such as access control, that is also something that can be done with the private blockchains. Access controls can be made onto a granular level. You can use some of the existing identity management solutions available in the market to actually grant accesses to private blockchain. And just looking at the authentication, authorization part as well, private blockchain gives you those abilities to leverage all those different security controls that you want to do to make sure that you're also following the internal security controls your organization already has. Right. And I think that is the key difference between a private and public blockchain, that private blockchain is not decentralized essentially, right? It is still in the control of the organization. So do you see any use case for a consortium blockchain, or why do you think consortium blockchains are something that has been coming up in the recent times?
Where people have to contribute for a large extent. This is an evolution. See, we witnessed the internet revolutions, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, the web has evolved. So people are contributing to now with the Facebook and social media, the web 3.0, it's evolved. And I think people are conceptualizing 4.0 also. So similarly, this blockchain technology also evolved, where
Yeah,
people have to contribute to this database, people have to update, they have to provide these remarks, updates, and all these things. Then there's this consortium blockchain. This is how it is come up. This evolution, technology is always evolving as per our human intellect, basically, I would say. So this is natural outgrowth of that phenomenon.
understood, understood. So I think since you also mentioned Web 3.0, so I think it would be better if you could give our participants a kind of an insight onto what Web 3.0 is, what the framework looks like, and what people are trying to achieve with that framework as well.
Yeah. See, it's basically based on IP. We have version 6, and the people can contribute. I can see it's all very pervasive. The interface and see, presently people are like browsing, and it's a one-to-one communication, so like one-to-many communication. Whereas the Web 4 3.0 and all these things, it's very immersive, and people can contribute to each other. They like metaverse, and people can not only upload the download, the people can contribute on the fly. People can contribute and add to what the people are doing. So right now we are seeing this already in the social medias, but then it is all more pervasive, and the technology is so evolving, so that it will look like a real life experience whenever you are watching. So you are in a virtual mode, you can see a lot of things which are in real mode, real time. The distance and the time are like almost merged, so that you can at your whenever you have wherever your internet, it looks like a real life experience. That is what the Web 3.0 is trying to create for all of us.
Understood, understood. I think that was a really good explanation. So if you have any questions or if anything you want to know around what we're talking about, I think we have a few questions and we can take those up. Right. So there's a question by Ayushi. She wants to know, when an NFT is traded on blockchain in exchange for Bitcoins, then are they on a different blockchain, or how does exactly that work? So I think she wants to understand how transfer of NFTs work, right, from one blockchain to another. And if they are bought from an exchange, how does that exactly work? Right. So your views on this?
Yeah. See, actually, like this is all on public blockchain, and see, they're created first from the user, and they're sold. Like no, then that properties of that linkages will continue wherever it is, whether you own it or whether you pass it on to somebody, whether you resell it, will continue. So that inherent value will be done, so will change as you buy, but that inherent that properties, the logical properties, and those will remain along with that wherever it moves. So it is a part of the blockchain technology, and nobody can fudge it. So if people are created for example, three NFTs, those three will continue forever unless you multiply them, and you create multiple like again. It has to be the parent and child concept. Again, you have to create so many other tokens, and then you can try to sell it. So that is how the technology is enabling the trading of NFTs.
Right. So basically, I think NFTs would stay on the same blockchain. The only difference is that the ownership assigned to that NFT would change. For example, if once someone decides to sell the NFT to someone else, once they make that transfer, once the payment has been confirmed, then the ownership automatically changes on the blockchain. It also acts as a proof for everyone that the actual owner of the NFT now, after the transaction or the payment, is a new person. So, right, you can see it on the blockchain because there are multiple blockchain explorers available on the internet for public blockchains. So, anything that is on a public blockchain, you can read all the data sets associated. But of course, in the inherent point of something as simple as Bitcoin is that you would not be able to identify the sender and receiver unless you know that this key belongs to them. Right? So that is the kind of anonymity it provides you. And it is very similar in the case of NFTs as well. I
Yes.
hope that answers your question, Aishi. We just had, I think, one other question. Data privacy, right of data erasure, or the right to be forgotten. How can we achieve that in a blockchain? I think we can probably cover that in the next few slides once we get into that topic as well. So just bear with us for a while, Rohit. We will get to that topic soon enough. Okay, meanwhile, I think we have had enough discussion around blockchain and technology. So let's go back to Menti and let's hear on your opinions about what do you think blockchain is useful for? Is it something that is only useful for financial transactions? Because that is what usually happens. I mean, a lot of changes have been made around cryptocurrencies, and most blockchain technologies are mostly used for financial transactions, or at least making sure that the transactions are faster. Right? That is something they want to achieve as well. For example, there is a cryptocurrency that I know of, which has a faster TPS or transactions per second, which is faster than Visa and MasterCard. Right? So they compare it with Visa and MasterCard because they have the best payment infrastructure in the industry. So there are tokens that are having faster transaction per seconds and kind of developing new applications around it. Right. So I think a lot of people understand that, of course, it is not only useful for financial transactions. There are multiple different use cases around blockchain, which we will discuss again. Right. It's good to see that a lot of people have this understanding, right? That blockchain and cryptocurrency are not two synonymous words. They are actually, in fact, really different. Right. So perfect. Right. So some of the privacy concerns in blockchain. So I'll just hand it over to you again, Vasant, your views on the privacy concerns.
Yeah. See, I think as you can see, there's a distributed database, immutable, decentralized, public. See, the three, the key the differentiators, I would say, from the data privacy perspective. The ownership. Always know there is data privacy. Who is the owner of data? This question is always given. There was a heated discussion when I think when GDPR was introduced and which made effective in 2018. May 2018, 26th of May 2018, it was effective. And for several years, up to 2020, there were a lot of discussions how the blockchain is impacting privacy in European perspective. And there is a European Data Protection Board, EDPB. They came out with a lot of discussions around this and the blockchain and data privacy at loggerheads. There are a lot of heated discussions on this. The blockchain is trying to prevent the data privacy, and privacy is violated because there is no ownership. The data is in everybody's hands. This distributed data based lecture. So the first, there is no owner. The data, you can, if you try to find out who is the owner for the data, it is not there. It is all distributed. If you try to find out whether the platform owner, the coder, it is not. They are not the owners. The data is distributed in this technology is ensuring that the data is distributed in multiple places. So it's basically if you try to find out who is the owner, there is no owner. So how do we address that in the first place? So the blockchain technology has come up with in the recent past to find out who can edit and who can modify these things. They have come up with some of these nuances. So that there was a question about whether the data can be deleted and data can be erased, updated, all this. Mind you, once the data is created in blockchain and this technology, it cannot be erased because the moment you try to erase it, there is a copy somewhere else of this. Wherever you try to delete, the entire chain is maintaining it. It is like the DNA. See, if you try to, it's already replicated in multiple places. So there is no way of deleting each and every place. But still, I think they have come up with solutions. Blockchain technology has evolved to some extent. At least they show how to erase it and all this. The second concern from the blockchain is about the erasure and modifications. Whether it can be right to forgotten. The important principle for the data privacy is the right to be forgotten. So, right to be forgotten, is it possible to implement in blockchain? There should be any trace of any personal data anywhere. This is one key area which is a concern area raised by a lot of privacy enthusiasts. And the blockchain is, I think, it's still evolving towards ensuring that the right to be forgotten, how it is to be implemented in this technology. And the third important is basically, I think, which is not mentioned in the slide, which is smart contracting. Contracting related to basically it's distributed ownership and distributed processing. How are you ensuring that the data processing is ensuring that that smart contracting is not violating the data privacy? So the data privacy is the first. It has come as a principle. I think all of us know. I think I don't know how many of the participants are from the blockchain perspective, the background, or how many are from the data privacy background. Nevertheless, I think just to recollect everybody's refreshing their memory. There are 8 principles in data protection. Any data to be processed, it actually should be fairly and lawfully processed. It should be transparency should be there. And though the blockchain has the transparency, the fair and lawful use or the fair and the lawful processing is very much important. This is the first principle of the data privacy. So any technology which is evolving or coming up, the newly which is coming up or which is going to come up, should follow this first principle of lawful and fair process with transparency. And whatever the processing intended purpose, that should be followed, and it should not be processed for some other use. Whatever the data is collected or collected or handled, it should be used only for that purpose, and it should not be used for multiple purposes. The technology is so evolved so much. People usually the processor and controller, they try to use it as well as technology is also enabling that to use it for multiple purposes. So that should be the requirement from data protection principle. The third principle of data protection is from the minimum data. You should collect as minimum data as possible. This is totally at loggerheads with the lot of technologies as well as the blockchain enthusiasts. They try to collect as much data as possible. Commercially, it is more viable and it is making sense for business purpose also to collect as much data as possible, distributed. But it is in violation of the third principle of the data protection, data privacy, which is minimum data to be collected. Nevertheless, the blockchain has the ability to, as Krishna mentioned, not only in the financial market, it can be used in health sector. It can be used
Yep.
in the general population sector. It can be used for land records. For example, in Telangana, the Bhumi project, I think Karnataka also, I think it is there. All the land records are protected through blockchain technology. So people the individual owners of the land, the owners of the building, they're all the technology is using and to ensure that the right people have it is ownership is maintained.
Yeah.
As well, also it can be used for voting. Actually, we are not evolved to that. The blockchain can be used for population related records, NPR, NCR. I think to some extent Aadhaar or to PAN records. I think income tax records. So many things, so many
Mm.
technologies where it can be used for ensuring that the right person votes. Or the voting technology can be moved to the blockchain technology, but I think our election commission has to evaluate that. The fourth one, I think, is for the fourth data protection principle is the need for accuracy. This is the most important, I think, which can be achieved in the blockchain technology. Accuracy has to be maintained, and the data has to be integral. Data has to be accurate. So this is one principle. The technology is always ensuring that the data is accurate because of the distributed ledger system, and nobody can edit that.
Yep.
And that's the principle. The fifth principle is another which is at loggerheads with data retention and time limit. So the principle, it's no, it should be deleted after the use. It should not be used for more than whatever your policy statement. This is one of the heart of the data principle. Whereas blockchain, I think, no, the data resides forever. Because it is distributed and then computing happens
Yeah.
in multiple. This is so the technology is evolving. Actually, it's there is a white paper distributed by EDPP on how the blockchain has to evolve and what is to be done. I think 2020 it was published. It is around 120 pages. People, I think I can share you the link if somebody requires it. I can put it in the chat box. Maybe people can look into that there whenever there is there. It is talking about how the distributed ledgers can be scaled up with the European data protection law. So I think no, it tells us what is to be done, how it should be done, and there are a lot of debates between blockchain technologists and data privacy experts to how the thing to happen. So the one good thing is EDPB and this blockchain technologies, they are working together to make it happen. They are not at confrontation or they are not at opposite ends. There is no what is that ruling party and opposition party kind of thing. They are working together in collaborative manner to ensure the distributed data are to the benefit of the mankind as well as to the citizens of the Europe as well as to the whole global community. So
Right. Right.
yeah. So the fourth principle, actually, I think I mentioned on the fifth principle about data retention. The sixth principle about right to be forgotten. This is the most difficult to be implemented in anywhere actually. Right to be forgotten means you should know where all the data is, and we should be able to delete it whenever there is a request. So this is the very difficult, most difficult part to be implemented. But I think still the technology is ensuring that they have the wherewithal to find out where all the data is there. Only thing is it takes a lot of computation and find out where all the data is distributed and to be implemented. But due to the technology of distribution shape, we don't know whether people have extended it or people have copied it. This is very similar to a legend. It's actually we all know there's Bhasmasura. I don't know people have understood about the Bhasmasura and all this. See, and that the technology is so evolved, and actually, no, it's trying to checkmate itself. So that is the problem. Actually, like no technology. So that no, like, and there is another story, a legendary story about Rakta Bijasura. I don't know if people have heard about it. See, the blood actually, no, it multiplies. The god tries to kill the demon, and that due to every blood, whenever it's coming out of the demon, it creates more demons. So it's like that. It's a technology is so evolving. So wherever when you try to delete it, again there is more copies and more copies. So this is what actually I'm trying to highlight. So right to be
Right.
forgotten is very difficult to implement. And but the seventh principle about data security, ensuring that the technical measures are put, encryption is put, anonymization, masking. This is it can be easily achieved using blockchain. So this is one of the inherent technologies of this. So people who are need to know all this only will be able to see the data, and other people will not be and encryption and all this. So the use cases of this, I think we have seen it in a lot of places. Technical and controls are can be implemented. The most last part is about accountability. Who is the owner of the data, and how it can be addressed, and ensuring that all these things are principles are followed, and then ensuring that all the accuracy and integrity are maintained, and there should be accountability setting. So this is a difficult part as far as blockchain, because accountability is with multiple people. That though the technology platform is ensuring that these responsibilities are defined, the accountability is still is to be asserted. People don't want to take their own accountability. They are responsible for their own areas. For example, software developers, the crypto, this blockchain software technologies, they'll be responsible for their kind of work. But whereas the people who are account, if they want, if you ask them to be accountable for A to Z, they would like not to. See, the
Right.
governance and the accountability is what is most important. Actually, I would say. So accountability comes from the governance. So is there any governance and single these things? Answer is no. So, but whether it can be done, yes, it can be done. The how it can be done, I think see, it's similar to the present cloud alliance and all those things. The blockchain is evolving so that no, the governance and accountability issues also should can be addressed with the owner defining who can do what and who cannot do what. So if this is distributed ledgers, so the owner can decide using the blockchain technology who can update, who cannot update, who can see, who cannot see. So technology is evolving actually, like no, to ensure that this accountability principle also is ensured to be followed. So, actually coming back to this slide, what I think is showing decentralized approach and distributed database, public chain networks. All these are issues of there is a heated debate between Europe where this have to be addressed. Unless we address this, we will not be able to utilize in our database and our platforms. Is
Right.
a stand taken by the authorities. But then I think the technologies are always say they never give up, right? They find out the ways to ensure that the technologies are adopted. So there is a lot of business at stake. There is a lot of IPRs at stake. There is a lot of funding and then push from US and I think other emerging technology, emerging countries. I think India is also part of it.
Yeah.
So all this will ensure that the data protection principles are also are ensured to be adhered to, as well as the technology is evolved and adapted to make it happen. See, I think one thing we should keep it in mind: technology adoption should not be done for the sake of technology. It is there; it should be adopted for the benefit of the mankind and service to the mankind and service to the humanity, to the customers and stakeholders. So technology is the one which is not constant. Actually, the principles remain constant. So data protection principles, they will not be able to change. So the principles, the regulators, we have to convince them that these technologies can be evolved and adapted to make sure that requirements of public at large are met. So that is how I think the concerns are addressed.
Right. So thank you for that. I think we covered mostly everything that is around blockchain and data privacy and how they are associated as well. And I think there's a follow-up question based on the discussion we just had. And Ashutosh wants to know if in a public blockchain, how do you make sure that someone is accountable for a data privacy law? Right. I think Vasant, you already covered it that if there is no central authority, accountability is an issue. But for example, if there is a data breach that happens on a public blockchain, can we fine and maybe hold someone accountable for it?
Actually, whenever it's happening, see the data controller's neck is at stake. So whoever is the data controller for the data, see what he is as per the law is concerned, the data controller is responsible. How he gets it done, how he done is a $1 million question. But as far as the authorities are concerned, they'll catch hold of controller and they'll fine or they put penalty or they'll hold him responsible or accountable to ensure that the impact and the damage is controlled to a large extent, whatever it is, and to give a corrective action, preventive action, so that no this breach is compensated or whatever it is. So there is no question about far as the regulatory body is concerned. Uh,
Right. So I think most blockchain networks, for example, public blockchain networks as well, are associated with an organization, right? In the case of Bitcoin, we are not sure who the proper person would be, but for in any other blockchain solution, or maybe for example, any cryptocurrency that you would see, there is an organization that associates itself with that cryptocurrency, right? In that case, they would be the controllers, and they must be held accountable in case there is a data breach in the blockchain. Okay, I think Ayushi has a question. Ayushi wants to know how can we check and delete or at least stop IP infringement over blockchain? I mean, that I think it's a use case that she wants to understand how blockchain can stop IP infringements.
yeah. See, the IP see, whenever the data is stored in a blockchain, see, we will never know. See, it can be personal data, it can be intellectual property, it can be code, it can be script, or it can be anything.
Yeah,
So, what is getting infringed, actually, no, is the investigation we have to do. And then basically technologies are there, which will find out what can be the IP, whether, see, we don't know actually. See, by inherent, see, data is always, see, there is always a concept. What is there inside is the data controller has to decide actually, right? So whether he puts it intellectual property data or personal data or sensitive data, and how we are protecting it, where the intellectual property is being moved and where it has all been distributed, that will come to know. Whether there's an infringement, that we have to investigate and see, it has to be controlled. If it is intellectual property, we should ensure that it is not put it in the public domain, and somebody should not walk away with that. So how the blockchain is able to help that is basically there should be mechanism of monitoring these things, and then if there is a violation, you should be able to delete that, and the owner should decide how to get it done. So that is a requirement, very important document from the legal perspective. Otherwise, it can cost the business.
right. I think, Ayushi, I hope that answers the question. And if you have any follow-up question, just feel free to put on the chat. Now we'll just simply go back
There's
to
a,
Menti again.
there is a one more question actually. I don't know. There's a question from Vishal Havaldar. Does data collected in blockchain can be deleted?
Yeah,
Which I think I can answer live actually here.
yeah,
Basically, it cannot be deleted because it's multiple, but the technologies has evolved right now, where the owner can decide, like the owner can decide who can delete that data. And it's possible to delete the data now in recent past. So if the owner allows that to be deleted, so people can be updated and it can be nullified. The data can be, all the data can be nullified and then updated. So that no, this data can be, data deletion is happens. But the right to forgotten, there's no deletion everywhere. See, deletion in the sense, see, how you can be deleted, it cannot be read. See, I think in deletion also, there are a lot of definitions. For example, the data deletion. See, in the circumstance, in normal you and me, if you ask me what is a deletion, deletion can be actually security terms, like no ensuring that it is not recovered anytime. So I think you must have heard about softwares called Blanco and other things. They'll ensure that they run the software for 6 to 7 times to ensure that the data hard disk is the data is totally deleted. So if you format a high level format or something, if you do, it doesn't mean the data is deleted. So in the non-com structure, just put the delete button. Doesn't mean data is deleted. So similarly in blockchain, whether the data is deleted, you have to ascertain only when everything is deleted. When all the distributed ledger and all these things are deleted, then only it's called deleted. So the deletion also has various levels of deletion. So some people think that masking the data is deletion. See, in legal sense, it makes sense. For example, retention period. So you don't want to delete each and every record. For example, I'll take a typical case of an enterprise. Enterprise have to delete the data after the employee leaves the organization. But for legal purposes, they have to maintain it for several years. For example, income tax rules in India, they ask us to maintain for eight years and above. So income tax department can come to your office to ask for the data of the employee. So you need to maintain the payroll records or whatever they have disbursed to that person, his PAN number, his current address, or his last email address, or whatever he has recorded, or his name and employee ID. So those things you have to maintain it. So other things you can delete it, whatever leave records, I think other things. So a lot of people have database which is legacy systems. So how to delete deletion of the records is sometimes it not be possible. So what you do, you scramble the data, you mask the data so that now whatever related fields are removed from the
Mhm.
screen, and that is how it's called deletion. So the EDPB accepts that formula. That deletion is make sure that the data is not read by anybody is also called deletion. So if you convert everything, all the data into X or like no some one or something, if like in the digital terms, that's also called deletion. So you do not delete actually the record, but you convert everything the deletion to something else, so that no nobody can read that. Machine can also read that. So that's called deletion. So
Right. So I think
and
I just wanted to add on to that a little, since you mentioned about scrambling that data. So I was also reading some researches wherein what blockchain technologies or blockchain owners are trying to do is that they simply encrypt the data that they want to delete and they delete the encryption keys.
right,
Right? Because
absolutely,
in yeah, so in that case, people would not be able to access that data. That data is there. It would of course consume those resources, but in the end, no one would be able to access that data, and it is following the right to be forgotten principle, right? Because that is also something the European board approves of. Because as long as you make sure that no one can access that data, it is similar to deletion. Of course, it's
yeah.
not the same thing, but it completes the objective.
Yeah. But see, the data subjects have a lot of rights in the Europe actually. Like, and see, they can say you are told that encryption is that you have deleted, but prove me that the data is deleted. Prove me that it's forgotten. So the organizations have the should employ the technology and the experts to prove that they have deleted or that they have, so that this proving is difficult. See, the data is visible, so you have encrypted or masked. So does that mean it cannot be unmasked? Does that mean it cannot be unencrypted? So these questions they should be proven in the court. But nevertheless, I think no, they are very practical solutions to the principles of data protection.
Right. I mean, I think we have to, because of course there's a cost to benefit analysis that we have to do, and
Right.
there are some changes that we will have to do. Because changing the entire technology to make sure that we can also follow the GDPR principles is not something that would be practical. But coming up with these different innovative solutions to at least try and implement those principles is something that we can do when we talk about blockchain. So we spoke a lot about the different data privacy concerns, and I just want your views on how blockchain is inherently more secure than any other technology, and how do people perceive blockchain as a comparatively more secure solution?
Yeah. So I think this is very important topic as far as benefits of blockchain is concerned. So the benefits are inherent. It's a part of the design of this blockchain. So ensure that the no data is fudged or no data is edited without infringing the entire network. So it is similar to with one cell. If you cannot change the DNA of a person, The entire DNA you have to change. Then only you can modify the person. Similar to that. So data is distributed, and that is how, because of the inherent nature of this blockchain, this encryption, authentication, and all these things can be enabled. So that no, that's it is a like no, the very good opportunity for the software developers and the security experts, the security software developers, I would say, and security code like enthusiasts to use this blockchain to use it for the benefit of security for the organization as well as to the customers or whatever. See, for a lot of things can be processed like a robotic process automated using this blockchain. Like, you know, for example, authentication. So, who is the person? Authentication using blockchain, you can exactly find out who is the person who is coming to the network, and without other authentication mechanisms, you can find it out using that. Encryption, validation. These are all inherent features of blockchain. Can be utilized for the benefit of the database of the employees, and like, you know, securing the records of the data. This is also important. Security, encryption, authentication, and all this data on the network and storage. All these are part and parcel by design. By design, these are part of the blockchain. So see, because of this, malicious cyber attacks, no, they will also have a very tough time to prevent cyber attacks on these blockchain technologies. Nevertheless, they do, but it takes slightly, I think, other efforts and to break this barrier. But to a large extent, this technology is enabling this data security in this respect.
Right. So inherently, blockchain, of course, covers data security, data privacy, and of course, we also discuss the limitations on how it cannot implement some of the data privacy principles. But as the technology evolves, there would be changes that you would see in the technology, and there would be updates that would be made to make sure that we can also complement the existing laws, regulations, right? Because in the end, we must create a technology that is compliant to laws, because the laws are there to make sure that our fundamental rights are there for every user or data subject, right? So I think we are nearing the end of our webinar as well, and we'll move on to the last slide we have here. We'll have to skip the different mentee, and we'll just different some use cases, right? How it can be used. So just like you mentioned about securing DNS, it's something that can be used if through blockchain, securing private messaging, right? These are some of the use cases that we have identified, and especially in the field of IoT security, I think blockchain can play a huge role there, because as more industries become dependent on these IoT sensors to run, it makes more sense for a different approach to make sure that IoT devices are secure, because they are very critical sensors, and just one change in one element of a sensor can impact the entire manufacturing industry. As an example, when I was an intern back during my college time, I worked for a agency called NFC, the Nuclear Fuel Complex, right? So this is basically in Hyderabad, and it is under the Baba Atomic Research Center. And they had multiple different furnaces where they were using programmable logical controllers, PLC codes, to manage certain things. And just one change in the input can actually have a disastrous impact on that particular manufacturing unit, because they were holding a different set of nuclear fuels, or at least creating those technologies, having radioactive substances. So it makes their work more important. So IoT security is something that is a hot topic right now in the industry as well, and how we can achieve it, right? So I think we'll just move towards the end of the webinar as well, and we will leave the last few minutes for a simple Q&A. So if anyone has any other questions that we have not covered as of now, we would be happy to take it up from our end. Any other questions? I think Ayushi has a question. She wants to understand if burning an NFT on the blockchain means that all copies would be burnt, or the NFT has to be individually dealt with. So, what is your opinion here, Vasant sir?
No, I think all the individual NFT have to be burnt. That is what actually it is. Otherwise, it's if you burn only one item, it's superficial. It is not the deletion.
Right. So, any other questions you have around data protection, around blockchain, or anything you would like to know, please feel free to put it in the chat section.
Yeah, I think no, there is a very, I think I actually put IoT security and these are the very important things.
Mm-hmm.
See, the provenance of computer software, I think I'll describe on this. The provenance word actually basically origin of software. Like no, see, it's like the control, how it originated. This is where actually the IPR, I think, protection. See, it is a core source code and the code that you can software code, origin code. Because this is the heart of the business, any business. For
Right.
example, operating system code. See, this can be used using technologies of it can be used, blockchain can be used to protect that. And you know who has modified what and see. Basically, it stores entire log of the modifications and up to date. It is like the what is the control of the software, right? You know, like the history of the entire software from the beginning of its creation and to the end, the source code library and the control part of that, and decentralized database. So this is the biggest benefit of the blockchain. You do not maintain in one place. The people can update. For example, see the passports office, the UIDs for these countries can be using blockchain technologies to maintain the up-to-date record of each and everything. So whenever people are applying for such thing, say for example, people change places, people change locations, countries. So all these updations can happen on decentralized database. So citizens are enabled to update their own database. So rather than some authority is doing it for them. So it's a self-service kind of thing. So that now the distributed database and accurately it's up to date we can maintain. So the voters list, PAN card number, the other numbers, the addresses, and all the important information. The banks can utilize it for the know your customer information.
Yeah.
KYC details they can maintain up to date. All the CRM companies, telephone companies can maintain the database using these data. So the authority, the empowering is left to the users as well as to the organizations to maintain it up to date. The secure private messaging. This is also one very important aspect. Using blockchain, you can send very private message which nobody can decipher what is going on. See, because we all use the open source messaging systems, but using blockchain, you can have very secret messaging between the recipients and the senders. So these are some of the use cases. I think there are some questions in the chat box.
Right. So I was just focusing on that. So I think Arjun has a question around what is tokenization in blockchain and does data privacy have a role to play in tokenization?
Because of this distributed architecture, this distributed linkages are called tokens. So these are distributed, and that is how the blockchain technology works. So the tokens will have information of where the information is stored and where the information is. It's called index. It's called similar to the index and the linkages. So that is how the technology is in place.
Right.
Can we have different data retention periods for different data and different? There's obviously, see, every database has a different data retention period. See, you should delete as it is not required. See, for example, leave records, they may not be required after 2 or 3 years. The financial records, they may not be required after 8 years.
Yeah.
And for example, tour records and all these things, they may not be required after 3 or 4 years. So every country has a requirement. See, for example, recruitment data, the data of the recruitment. In some countries, it is worth 7 days. You cannot have CVs maintained for more than 7 days. In Hungary and some of the countries in Europe, they ask us to delete the CVs within 2 or 3 days of your receipt. If they are not recruiting, then we delete it immediately. In Switzerland also, I think there are some 1 month update, deletion. So accordingly, the data retention. See, you have to have a tool or you have to have a policy as well as to make it enable. So
Yeah.
you define the periods for different data points, data fields, and delete it using the tools for those periods. So you don't violate the rule, violate the requirements of the country as well as violate the policies of your own. So this can be done. So that is how the principles of retention periods are maintained. You cannot have one single thing for everything. It has to be data fields that were deleted at different points of time for different countries. Also different. You can have a common policy for many countries, but every country has a different requirement, and you have to go by the retention periods defined as per the regulatory requirements of those countries.
Definitely. I think a data retention policy is something the organization usually starts with. They
Yeah.
identify the different laws they have to comply with, and based on that, they also determine the different retention periods that they have to use for, kind of first thing is to make sure that you comply with the laws. The second thing is to make sure that you can also look after your business interest as well. For example, if you're building a product that would require data from 3 years over the last 6 months, right? So you would have to make sure that you can retain that data. You could also inform the
Yeah,
user
yeah,
that
absolutely,
we will be using
absolutely.
your data.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, anything. See, any exceptions are always. You can take a consent
Yeah,
and you can maintain it. But whatever can should be deleted. For example, health records. You should not maintain it beyond their consent, without the consent. And there
right,
will always be exceptions. For example, some cases, legal cases will be going on, so you cannot delete it. You have to exceptions. You have to maintain it. Sometimes legal cases can go for more than 10 years also. So you have to maintain it for more than 10 years. So all these exceptions are there, and your tool and deletion should follow that those exceptions
Mhm.
rather than the rule actually. So the exceptions have to be kept separately. Rules have to be followed for the general data.
Perfect, perfect. Right. So I think if you have any other questions, we will be happy to take it up over LinkedIn, or you could just send an email or write us on LinkedIn that you have a question, and we would be happy to take it up. And this brings us towards the end of the session. So first of all, I would just like to thank you for coming here and sharing your valuable insights. I think a lot of people benefit out of this session. Everyone wanted to understand how data protection works in blockchain, and I think we were able to give a very valuable input or insights to everyone, something they can probably take back to their organization and share with their peers as well. Right. So, and then again, of course, thank you to the participants for coming in, and thank you for sharing in all your different questions. I think it also helped us shape our perspective on what the community wants to understand around data protection in blockchain. So whenever we have the next conversation around data blockchain, we will also take into mind your questions and how we can also develop answers or develop practical use cases to those questions as well.
Thank you, Krishna, and the participants. I think participants were very active, and they participated wholeheartedly, asking the very right questions and their doubts and queries. I think it was very collaborative discussion. I would say. Thank you so much for your participation and enriching the knowledge on this blockchain and the data protection.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you. We will close the webinar for now. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you.
good day. Bye bye.